Everyone laughed at the millionaire when he married the disfigured woman, until he proved to them what true love is. When tech mogul Joshua Sterling married cybersecurity expert Amelia Williams, whose face bore the permanent digital scars of the hack that nearly destroyed her career, the world laughed. But they had no idea what lengths a man would go to prove that love sees what others are blind to. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy this story, because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now let's get into the story. The notification sound echoed through Joshua Sterling's penthouse office like a death knell. Another headline. Another cruel meme. Another reminder that his marriage had become the internet's favorite punchline. Tech billionaire's beauty and the beast marriage. When money can't buy good taste. Joshua's fingers tightened around his phone as he scrolled through the comments beneath the leaked photos from their private wedding ceremony. The images showed him, impeccably dressed in his tailored tuxedo, gazing adoringly at Amelia. Beautiful, brilliant Amelia, whose face bore the distinctive raised patterns that had become her unwanted signature. Dude seriously married a lizard woman for the tax benefits. Money can't buy love, but apparently it can buy desperation. Plot twist: she's actually an AI robot and this is all a publicity stunt. Each comment felt like a physical blow. Joshua set the phone down with deliberate control, his jaw clenched as he stared out at the Seattle skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The Space Needle pierced the gray morning sky like a steel prayer, while Elliott Bay stretched toward the Olympic Mountains in the distance. Somewhere in this city, Amelia was probably seeing the same headlines, reading the same vicious words. But Joshua knew something the trolls didn't. Something that would shatter their cruel assumptions if they ever learned the truth. The scarring across Amelia's skin wasn't just the result of a cybersecurity accident. It was the mark of betrayal, a deliberate attack orchestrated by someone they trusted. Someone who was still out there, watching, waiting, planning their next move. His secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Detective Maria Santos of the Seattle PD's Cybercrimes Unit. New developments in the Williams case. Meet me at Pike Place in 20. Come alone. Trust no one at Sterling Tech. Joshua's blood turned to ice. The Williams case was supposed to be closed. 3 years ago, after Amelia's accident during the neural interface test, the investigation had concluded it was a system malfunction. Tragic but accidental. But if Maria was reaching out now, after all this time, the irony wasn't lost on him. The same people mocking their love had no idea that Amelia Williams was the most sought-after cybersecurity expert in the world, that her disfigurement was actually the result of an experimental neural interface she developed to combat cyber terrorism. What they also didn't know was that the prototype's malfunction hadn't been an accident. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the system, turning Amelia's greatest achievement into a weapon against her. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Sterling, your mother is here to see you. She says it's urgent." Joshua's stomach dropped. He hadn't seen his mother since the wedding 3 months ago, since she'd walked out of the ceremony in tears, unable to accept his choice. But urgent visits weren't Victoria Sterling's style. She preferred scheduled appointments and controlled environments. "Send her in." And Miranda, "Clear my schedule for the next 2 hours." "Sir, you have the board meeting at." "Clear it." Victoria Sterling entered like a storm system, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor with military precision. Even at 65, she commanded attention. Silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. But something was different today. Her usual armor of perfection showed cracks, her lipstick slightly smudged, her hands trembling almost imperceptibly. David. She used his middle name, something she only did when she was deeply upset. Mother. He didn't get up from his desk, didn't offer the customary hug. They'd moved past such pleasantries. "You look troubled." Victoria placed a tablet on his desk, but this time it wasn't displaying financial reports. Instead, the screen showed a series of photographs, surveillance images of Amelia entering and leaving various buildings around Seattle. The timestamps showed they'd been taken over the past month. "Someone's been watching her," Victoria said without preamble. "Professional surveillance. The kind that costs serious money." Joshua stood slowly, ice forming in his veins. "How do you know about this?" "Because I hired them." The admission hit Joshua like a physical blow. "You what?" Victoria's composure cracked completely. "I wanted to find something, anything that would prove she was using you. That this marriage was some elaborate con. I hired a private investigation firm to follow her, dig into her background, find evidence that she was after your money." Her voice broke. "I thought if I could prove she was manipulating you, you'd come to your senses. Mother." "But that's not what they found." Victoria's hands shook as she swiped to the next screen. "They found this." The image showed Amelia in what appeared to be a doctor's office, but not just any doctor. The nameplate on the door read, "Dr. Elizabeth Chin, Reproductive Endocrinology." Joshua's world tilted. "She's seeing a fertility specialist?" "For 3 weeks now. Regular appointments. And Joshua." Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "The investigator said she specifically requested doctors who specialize in high-risk pregnancies involving neural interface patients." The implications crashed over Joshua like a tsunami. Amelia was either trying to get pregnant or already was pregnant, and she hadn't told him. Given the experimental nature of her neural interface, any pregnancy would be medically complex and potentially dangerous. "There's more," Victoria continued, her voice heavy with guilt. "The investigation firm I hired, Blackstone Securities. I didn't know at the time, but they're owned by Richard Blackstone." Joshua felt the room spin. Richard Blackstone, the Cyberdyne CEO who'd made cruel comments about Amelia at the gala. His mother had unknowingly hired their business rival to spy on his wife. "He knows about the doctor visits," Victoria continued. "He knows about whatever's happening with Amelia's health. And Joshua, I think he's planning to use it against you somehow." Before Joshua could respond, his secure phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "Your wife's secret is safe with me. For now. But secrets have a way of becoming public when the price is right. A friend." Joshua showed the message to his mother, whose face went white. "Someone else knows." "About what exactly?" Joshua's voice was deadly quiet. "I don't know. But the timing can't be coincidental. The leaked wedding photos, the sudden surge in negative publicity, Richard Blackstone's renewed interest in Sterling Technologies contracts. Someone's orchestrating this. Someone who knows things about you and Amelia that they're willing to weaponize." Joshua's mind raced through the possibilities. If Amelia was pregnant, the stress of the media attention could be dangerous for both her and the baby. If she was trying to get pregnant, the public humiliation could affect her treatment options. Either way, someone was using intimate details of their private life as ammunition in a larger war. His office door burst open without warning. Miranda, his assistant, stood in the doorway with wild eyes and a face drained of color. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been an incident at Dr. Williams' lab. The police are there now and—" She swallowed hard. "They're saying it looks like sabotage." Joshua was moving before she finished speaking, grabbing his jacket and heading for the door. But Victoria caught his arm. "Wait," she said urgently. "There's something else you need to know. Something I should have told you 3 years ago." Joshua turned, impatience and fear warring in his chest. "What?" Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your father's death wasn't a heart attack." The words hit Joshua like a physical blow. His father, tech pioneer David Sterling Sr., had died suddenly 5 years ago. The official cause was cardiac arrest brought on by stress and overwork. But Victoria's expression suggested a very different truth. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that someone very powerful has been planning this for a long time. Your father discovered something. Some connection between major tech companies and foreign interests. He was going to go public, but he died before he could." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "And now they're coming for you. For both of you." Joshua felt the pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place. His father's mysterious death. Amelia's accidental neural interface malfunction. The coordinated media attack on their marriage. Richard Blackstone's sudden interest in Sterling Technologies' government contracts. Someone had been playing a long game, and Joshua and Amelia were the targets. His phone rang, Amelia's ringtone. He answered immediately. "Joshua." Her voice was shaky, scared. "Someone broke into my lab. They didn't steal anything, but they accessed my personal files. My medical records." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They know about the pregnancy." Joshua's heart stopped. "The what?" "I was going to tell you tonight. I found out yesterday, and I wanted to plan something special, but now." She was crying. "Joshua, whoever did this left a message on my computer. They said the baby will never be safe as long as we're together." The line went dead. Joshua looked at his mother, seeing his own terror reflected in her eyes. This wasn't just about business rivalry or social prejudice anymore. This was about their family, their future family, being threatened by enemies they couldn't yet identify. "We have to go," he said grimly. "And mother, whatever guilt you're carrying about hiring those investigators, put it aside. We're going to need every piece of information they gathered if we're going to protect Amelia and our child." As they rushed from the office, Joshua's mind was already calculating odds and strategies. Someone had turned their love story into a weapon against them. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd threatened his family. And Joshua Sterling had built a billion-dollar empire by never backing down from a fight, especially when everything he loved was on the line. The war for their love story was just beginning, and Joshua intended to win it at any cost. Plot twist alert. Joshua's father was murdered, Amelia is pregnant, and someone's been orchestrating attacks on their family for years. How do you think these revelations will change everything? What would you do if you discovered your love story was actually the target of a long-term conspiracy? Share your theories about who's really behind these attacks. Your detective skills might crack the case before Joshua and Amelia do. The Sterling Technologies annual gala was supposed to be Joshua's triumph, but as his limousine pulled up to the Four Seasons Grand Ballroom, it felt more like walking into a battlefield. 500 of the tech industry's most influential minds had gathered to celebrate another record-breaking year for his cybersecurity empire. But Joshua knew at least some of them were enemies in expensive suits. Through the tinted windows, he could see the red carpet stretching toward the hotel's grand entrance, lined with photographers and reporters who looked more like vultures than journalists. The media attention had tripled since the wedding photos leaked, and tonight felt less like a celebration and more like a public execution. "Are you sure about this?" Joshua asked, turning to study his wife's profile in the dim interior of the car. Amelia sat beside him like a queen preparing for battle. Her midnight blue gown hugged her curves like liquid starlight, the high neckline tastefully covering most of the bioelectric scarring on her neck and décolletage. But the intricate patterns that traced along her jawline and cheekbones were fully visible. Swirling, circuit-like designs that seemed to shimmer under the car's ambient lighting. What the photographers couldn't see, what no one knew except the two of them, was that beneath that stunning gown, Amelia was carrying their child. The pregnancy was barely 8 weeks along, but already the doctors had warned them about complications. The neural interface in her system created unknown variables. Every day was a risk. "I'm sure," she said, though her voice carried the tremor of nerves. "We can't let them win by hiding. Besides..." She placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. "Our baby deserves to see their parents fighting for what's right." Joshua covered her hand with his, marveling at the warmth of her bioelectric scarring even through the fabric of her dress. "The threats are escalating, Amelia. That message about the baby never being safe is exactly why we need to show strength tonight." Her dark eyes flashed with determination. "Whoever's behind this wants us scared, isolated, vulnerable. The moment we start hiding is the moment they win." Their conversation was interrupted by Joshua's phone buzzing with an encrypted message from Detective Santos. "Facial recognition cameras at the hotel have flagged 3 individuals with false identities. Private security is compromised. Watch your back tonight." Joshua showed the message to Amelia, whose expression hardened. "So they're here. Good. Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The car door opened, and immediately the night exploded with camera flashes and shouted questions. "Joshua, over here. Mr. Sterling, how do you respond to allegations that your marriage is affecting Sterling Technologies stock prices? Amelia, is it true you're seeking experimental treatment for your facial scarring? How does it feel to be married to one of America's richest men?" Joshua kept his arm firmly around Amelia's waist as they navigated the red carpet, offering practiced smiles while his eyes scanned the crowd for potential threats. He could feel the tension in her body, the way she held herself with careful poise despite the chaos around them. But then something unexpected happened. As they paused for photos at the media wall, a young woman in the crowd of reporters called out, "Dr. Williams, I'm a computer science student at UW. Your work on predictive AI systems inspired me to switch my major. Thank you for showing girls like me that we belong in tech." Amelia's professional mask slipped, replaced by genuine warmth. "What's your name?" "Jessica Chen. I'm writing my thesis on neural interface applications for accessibility technology." "That's incredible work. Have you considered the implications for assistive communication devices?" Without missing a beat, Amelia launched into a brief but passionate discussion about the intersection of AI and disability advocacy, her scarred face animated with intellectual excitement. Joshua watched in amazement as other students in the crowd began chiming in with questions. Despite the hostile media environment, despite the threats and surveillance, despite everything designed to tear her down, Amelia was still inspiring the next generation of scientists. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere shifted from chaotic to coldly civilized. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors, and the gentle hum of conversation mixed with the soft strings of a classical quartet. But conversations paused as they entered, then resumed with barely concealed whispers. Joshua guided Amelia toward their table at the front of the room, nodding to colleagues and investors along the way. But he noticed how many of the greetings felt forced, how many familiar faces avoided direct eye contact. The social dynamics had shifted since their wedding, and not in their favor. "Joshua." The voice belonged to Richard Blackstone, CEO of competing tech firm Cyberdyne Industries. He approached with his trophy wife, a blonde woman half his age whose plastic surgery was more obvious than her intelligence. But tonight, Richard's usual smug confidence seemed strained. "So glad you could make it. And this must be the famous Mrs. Sterling." The way he said famous made Joshua's jaw clench, but it was the calculating look in Richard's eyes that set off alarm bells. This was the man who'd hired the investigators to spy on Amelia. This was the man who somehow knew about the pregnancy. "Richard, I'd like you to meet my wife, Dr. Amelia Williams Sterling," Joshua said, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Richard's eyes lingered on Amelia's scarring with poorly concealed fascination, but there was something else there, a predatory interest that made Joshua's skin crawl. "Doctor. How interesting. What's your specialty?" "Cybersecurity and AI development," Amelia replied with professional grace, though Joshua noticed her hand trembling slightly against his arm. "Specifically, neural interface applications for threat prediction and response." "Ah, working in the family business, I see." Richard's smile was shark-like. "Though I imagine networking must be challenging in your field, especially given your unique circumstances." The implication hung in the air like poison. Joshua started to respond, but Amelia squeezed his arm gently. "Actually," she said, her voice gaining strength, "my unique circumstances, as you put it, make me exceptionally qualified for my work. The bioelectric scarring you're referring to was the result of a deliberate cyber attack on a classified government project. The same attack that would have crippled the Eastern Grid if I hadn't completed the mission despite the assault on my neural interface." Richard's smile faltered slightly. Yes, well, remarkable dedication to duty." "It wasn't duty," Amelia said quietly. "It was love. Love for my country, love for the innocent people who would have suffered, and love for the belief that some things are worth any sacrifice." Her eyes met Richard's directly. "I imagine that's difficult for some people to understand." The barb hit its mark. Richard's face flushed slightly, but before he could respond, his wife grabbed his arm. "Darling, there's Senator Hayes. We should say hello before dinner starts." As they walked away, Joshua leaned down to whisper in Amelia's ear, "Nicely done. But he knows something. Did you see how he was looking at you? Like he was cataloging vulnerabilities." Amelia murmured back, "We need to be careful tonight." They found their seats at the head table, surrounded by Joshua's board members and their spouses. The conversation flowed around topics of market trends and quarterly projections, but Joshua noticed how the other women at the table kept stealing glances at Amelia, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely veiled disdain. Dr. Patricia Vance, wife of Sterling Technologies' chief operating officer, leaned across the table during the appetizer course. "Amelia, dear, you must tell us about your skincare routine. Such interesting patterns. Is it some kind of new cosmetic treatment?" The question was delivered with saccharine sweetness, but the underlying cruelty was unmistakable. Several conversations at the table paused as people waited for Amelia's response. "Actually, Patricia," Amelia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "these are bioelectric scarring patterns from a neural interface accident. They're permanent markers of a mission where I chose to save lives rather than preserve my appearance. But thank you for your interest in my medical history." Patricia's face went red. "I didn't mean to." "Of course you didn't," Amelia said smoothly. "People rarely do." The table fell into uncomfortable silence until Dr. Robert Chen, Sterling Technologies' head of research, cleared his throat. "Dr. Williams, I've been following your work on predictive AI systems. The applications for healthcare monitoring could be revolutionary." "Thank you, Robert. I've actually been exploring how neural interface technology could help detect pregnancy complications early, especially in high-risk cases." Amelia's hand moved subtly to her stomach. The potential to save both maternal and fetal lives is extraordinary. Joshua felt his heart skip. She was talking about their situation, their fears, their hopes, disguised as academic discussion. "High-risk pregnancies are certainly a concern," added Dr. Margaret Foster, the chief medical officer for Sterling Technologies' Health Division. especially when experimental technology is involved. The liability issues alone. Some things are worth the risk, Joshua said quietly, his hand finding Amelia's under the table. Midway through the salad course, Joshua's phone buzzed with a notification. Then another. And another. His blood turned to ice as he recognized the pattern. The same viral surge that had accompanied their wedding photo leak. Joshua glanced at the screen and felt his world tilt. Someone had been live-streaming their entire evening, from the red carpet to their table conversations. But worse than that, they'd somehow obtained and leaked Amelia's medical records from Dr. Chen's office. The hashtag pregnant cyborg was trending nationwide, accompanied by dozens of memes and cruel commentary about their unborn child. Plot twist: she's going to give birth to a robot baby. Sterling Technologies' next product. Cyborg babies. Imagine being a kid and your mom looks like a computer circuit board. That poor baby is going to need therapy before it can even talk. One particularly vicious post showed an ultrasound image, their ultrasound image, with cruel annotations about defects and abnormalities. Joshua was about to put his phone away when he noticed Amelia's expression had changed. She was staring at her own phone, her face growing pale beneath the scarring. "Amelia," he whispered, leaning closer. "Don't look at." "Too late," she breathed, her voice barely audible over the dinner conversation around them. On her screen was a video that made Joshua's vision blur with rage. Someone had secretly recorded their conversation with Dr. Patricia Vance about skincare routines, but they'd edited it to remove context and add cruel commentary. The caption read, "When you're pregnant but look like a glitched AI trying to render human skin." The video had been shared over 50,000 times in the past hour. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the comment thread, where anonymous accounts were posting increasingly detailed threats against their unborn child. Threats that seemed to know things about their medical situation that only someone with access to classified information could know. Amelia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. "Excuse me," she murmured, gathering her clutch with shaking hands. "I need some air." Joshua rose to follow, but she shook her head almost imperceptibly. "Please, just give me a moment." He watched her walk toward the ballroom's exit, her spine straight despite the weight of 500 curious stares. Every instinct screamed at him to follow, to protect her, to shield her from the cruelty of people who couldn't see past their own prejudices. But as Amelia reached the ballroom doors, something unexpected happened. She stopped, turned around, and walked back toward the center of the room. The conversations died as she approached the small stage where the quartet had been playing. Without invitation or announcement, she stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice carried clearly through the ballroom sound system, "I'd like to address the elephant in the room." 500 faces turned toward her in shocked silence. Joshua felt his heart stop. "My name is Dr. Amelia Williams Sterling. 3 years ago, I was attacked while testing a neural interface designed to protect American infrastructure from cyber terrorism. The attack left me with permanent bioelectric scarring and nearly cost me my life. It also gave me abilities that no other cybersecurity expert in the world possesses." She paused, her hand moving to her stomach in a gesture of protection and defiance. "Tonight, someone violated my medical privacy to inform you that my husband and I are expecting our first child. They did this because they believe that my appearance, my scars, my difference makes me unworthy of love, unworthy of family, unworthy of the basic human dignity that each of you takes for granted." The ballroom was tomb silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving. What they don't understand is that these scars are not a mark of shame. They are a badge of honor. They represent a choice to put others before myself, to risk everything for the safety of strangers, to prove that love, real love, sees strength where others see weakness. Amelia's voice grew stronger, more passionate. Some of you might wonder how a man like Joshua could choose to marry someone like me. You might think it's charity, or manipulation, or some elaborate business arrangement. But the truth is simpler and more complicated than that. Her eyes found Joshua in the crowd, and he saw reflected there all the love, fear, hope, and determination that had brought them to this moment. Joshua Sterling didn't fall in love with me despite my scars. He fell in love with me because of who I became after surviving them. Because trauma, when met with love, doesn't make you broken. It makes you unbreakable. The silence stretched for an eternal moment. Then, instead of the applause Joshua expected, came something else entirely. Richard Blackstone stood slowly, his face a mask of cold fury. "How touching," he said, his voice carrying easily through the silent ballroom. "But what you haven't told them, Dr. Williams, is that your neural interface makes you a security risk. That your pregnancy could pass unknown genetic modifications to your child. That your very existence threatens the stability of every system you touch." Joshua felt the blood drain from his face. Richard was revealing classified information, things he shouldn't know, things that could only have come from. "You're right, Mr. Blackstone," came a new voice from the back of the ballroom. "She is a threat." All heads turned to see a woman in a black evening gown walking slowly down the center aisle. She was elegant, composed, and completely unfamiliar to Joshua. But Amelia's sharp intake of breath told him everything he needed to know. "Hello, Amelia," the woman said as she reached the front of the room. "It's been a long time." Amelia's voice, when she spoke, was barely a whisper. "Dr. Elena Reyes. You're supposed to be dead." "Death was always more convenient than answers," Elena replied with a cold smile. "But tonight, I think it's time for the truth. About the Neural Interface Project. About your father's real cause of death, Joshua. About why your child will never be safe as long as you're together." Joshua felt the world spin around him as pieces of a massive conspiracy began clicking into place. Elena Reyes had been Amelia's mentor, the lead scientist on the Neural Interface Project. She'd supposedly died in the same attack that scarred Amelia. But if she was alive, if she was here, if she was working with Richard Blackstone. "You see," Elena continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom, "the neural interface accident was never an accident. It was an experiment. And Amelia, you were always the intended subject. A major plot twist is ahead, so you better stick around. The mentor who was supposed to be dead is alive and revealed that Amelia was deliberately experimented on. This changes everything about the neural interface accident. What do you think Elena's real plan is? Let me know your predictions in the comments." The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons had transformed from a celebration into a stage for revelations that would reshape everything Joshua and Amelia thought they knew about their lives. 500 of the tech industry's most powerful figures sat in stunned silence as Dr. Elena Reyes, supposedly dead for 3 years, stood before them like a ghost materialized into flesh. Joshua felt Amelia's hand tremble in his as Elena's words echoed through the cavernous space. The neural interface accident was never an accident. It was an experiment. And Amelia, you were always the intended subject. "That's impossible," Amelia whispered, but her voice carried through the ballroom's perfect acoustics. "You died in the lab explosion. I saw the footage, the investigation reports." Elena's laugh was like ice cracking. "You saw what we wanted you to see. The explosion was real, but I was evacuated 30 minutes before it happened. We needed you to believe I was dead so you wouldn't look for me. So you wouldn't ask the right questions." Joshua stepped protectively in front of his wife, his mind racing through implications. Who is we? Ah, Joshua, the devoted husband. Elena's eyes glittered with malicious amusement. Still trying to be the hero, just like your father. It's almost poetic how history repeats itself. Leave my father out of this. But I can't, you see. Because David Sterling Sr. was the one who discovered what we were really doing. He was the one who threatened to expose the Prometheus project. And he was the one who forced us to accelerate our timeline. The name hit Joshua like a physical blow. The Prometheus project had been a classified initiative his father had mentioned only once years ago, in a conversation that had seemed like paranoid ramblings at the time. Something about tech companies secretly collaborating with foreign governments to develop human AI hybrids. Joshua had dismissed it as stress-induced conspiracy theories. Now, standing in the ballroom with his pregnant wife beside him and his father's killer revealing herself as alive, he realized his father had been trying to warn him. The heart attack, Joshua said quietly. You killed him. Potassium chloride injection. Elena confirmed with clinical detachment. Mimics cardiac arrest perfectly. Your father was getting too close to the truth about Phase 1. Which was? Elena gestured toward Amelia. Creating the first stable human-AI neural interface. We needed a brilliant mind, someone with the technical expertise to develop the technology and the moral flexibility to test it on themselves. Amelia was perfect. Moral flexibility. Amelia's voice was sharp with anger and hurt. I risked my life to protect innocent people. You risked your life because we manipulated you into believing that was your choice, Elena corrected. Every threat you thought you were defending against, every cyber attack you prevented, we orchestrated all of it. We needed you to develop the neural interface quickly, under pressure, without time for proper safety protocols. Joshua felt the world tilting beneath him. You're saying the cyber attacks on the Eastern Grid, the hospital systems, the financial networks. All of them were false flags, Richard Blackstone confirmed, stepping forward from where he'd been standing in the crowd. Sophisticated simulations designed to push Dr. Williams to complete the neural interface development ahead of schedule. Amelia was shaking now, her scarred face pale with shock and rage. 3 years. 3 years I've lived with the guilt of being disfigured by criminals. 3 years I've carried the trauma of that attack. And you're telling me it was all fake. Not fake, Elena said gently, as if she were explaining something to a child. Necessary. The neural interface needed to be tested under combat conditions. We needed to know if it would work when the subject was under extreme stress, fighting for their life. But why? Joshua demanded. What's the point of all this? What do you really want? Elena smiled, and for the first time, Joshua saw genuine warmth in her expression. Phase 2, of course. The propagation phase. She gestured toward Amelia's stomach with something that looked almost like maternal pride. Did you really think it was coincidence that you two fell in love? That you happened to meet at exactly the right time, under exactly the right circumstances? Joshua's blood turned to ice. What are you saying? I'm saying that your romance was as carefully orchestrated as everything else. The conference where you met, the accidental conversation that led to your first date, the series of seemingly random encounters that drew you together. All planned. The words hit Joshua like physical blows, but it was Amelia's sharp intake of breath that made him turn to look at his wife. Her face had gone ashen, her dark eyes wide with a horrifying realization. The pregnancy, she whispered. You needed me to get pregnant. Now you're beginning to understand, Elena said approvingly. The neural interface technology creates bioelectric pathways that can be passed to offspring, but only under specific hormonal conditions that occur during pregnancy. Your child won't just be human, Amelia. It will be the first true human-AI hybrid, capable of interfacing directly with any digital system from birth. You're talking about creating a weapon, Joshua said, horror dawning in his voice. I'm talking about creating the future, Elena corrected. A generation of children who can think at machine speed, process information like computers, and interface with AI systems as naturally as breathing. They'll be the next step in human evolution. And if we refuse? Amelia asked quietly. Elena's expression hardened. Refusal isn't an option. You see, the neural interface modifications we made to your system 3 years ago included certain fail-safes, remote activation capabilities that we can trigger at any time. As if to demonstrate, Elena pulled a small device from her evening bag and pressed a button. Immediately, the scarring across Amelia's face began to glow with brilliant blue light, and her eyes rolled back in her head as she convulsed. Stop! Joshua lunged forward, but 2 men in black suits, security he hadn't noticed before, grabbed his arms. Elena released the button, and Amelia collapsed to her knees, gasping. As you can see, Dr. Williams' autonomy is somewhat limited. The neural interface responds to our control frequencies. We can cause pain, unconsciousness, or even death with the push of a button. Joshua struggled against the men holding him, fury and desperation warring in his chest. You're insane. Both of you. We're visionary, Richard Blackstone corrected. Do you have any idea what military applications this technology has? Soldiers who can interface directly with weapon systems, pilots who can merge consciousness with aircraft, cyber warfare specialists who can attack enemy networks with the speed of thought. The applications are limitless, Elena added. And your child will be the prototype for an entire generation of enhanced humans. Of course, we'll need to monitor the pregnancy very carefully. Run tests. Make adjustments to the fetal development as needed. You want to experiment on our baby, Amelia said, her voice hoarse from the neural interface attack. I want to perfect our baby, Elena corrected. Because make no mistake, Amelia, this child belongs to the Prometheus Project as much as it belongs to you. Suddenly, the ballroom doors burst open, and armed figures in tactical gear poured into the room. But these weren't Elena's people. The leader removed her helmet, revealing Detective Maria Santos, but she was wearing FBI tactical gear instead of Seattle PD uniform. Dr. Elena Reyes, Maria announced, her voice carrying through the chaos. You're under arrest for international espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, and crimes against humanity. Elena's composed mask finally cracked. Impossible. You don't know. We know everything, Maria interrupted. Including your real name, Agent Yelena Volkov of the Russian SVR. We know about the Prometheus Project's real funding sources. We know about the planned cyber attacks on American infrastructure using hybrid children as unwitting weapons. And we know you've been selling American neural interface technology to hostile foreign governments. The revelation sent shockwaves through the ballroom. Elena, or Yelena, wasn't just conducting illegal experiments. She was a foreign spy who'd been using American citizens as test subjects for enemy nations. You're too late, Yelena snarled, raising the device that controlled Amelia's neural interface. Phase 2 is already in motion. The pregnancy hormones have activated dormant pathways in her system. Even if you arrest me, you can't reverse what's already begun. Actually, came a new voice from the balcony above. We can. All eyes turned upward to see a figure rappelling down from the mezzanine level. A woman in a sleek black tactical suit who landed gracefully near the stage. She removed her helmet, revealing short-cropped gray hair and ice-blue eyes. Joshua's jaw dropped. Dr. Catherine Wright? Catherine Wright was a legend in the cybersecurity world. A former NSA director who disappeared 5 years ago under mysterious circumstances. She was also the woman who'd recruited Amelia for the Neural Interface Project in the first place. Hello, Joshua. Amelia. Catherine's voice was warm despite the circumstances. I'm sorry it took us so long to get here. Catherine, Amelia breathed. We thought you were dead, missing, gone rogue. Catherine smiled grimly. I've been undercover for 3 years, investigating the Prometheus project from the inside, building a case against Agent Volkov and her network of collaborators. She gestured toward Richard Blackstone, who was now being handcuffed by FBI agents. Mr. Blackstone has been selling American tech secrets to foreign governments for over a decade. The attacks on your marriage, the leaked medical records, the social media campaigns, all designed to isolate you and make you vulnerable to Volkov's manipulation. But the neural interface, Joshua said desperately, the control device, has been neutralized, Catherine assured him, pulling out a device that looked similar to Yelena's but with different controls. We've been working on countermeasures since we discovered the remote access capabilities. Amelia, this might feel strange, but I'm going to disconnect the hostile pathways now. Catherine pressed several buttons in sequence, and the scarring across Amelia's face flickered with golden light instead of blue, then gradually faded to its normal warm glow. The good news, Catherine continued, is that the pregnancy is completely natural. No artificial enhancements, no genetic modifications, no experimental interference. Your child will be perfectly normal and healthy. But how is that possible? Yelena demanded, her composure completely shattered. The hormone triggers, the neural pathway activation. Were all fabricated, Catherine explained with satisfaction. The neural interface you installed in Dr. Williams 3 years ago was never capable of genetic modification or pregnancy enhancement. Those were lies designed to make you believe you had succeeded, while we gathered evidence of your crimes. The revelation sent another wave of shock through the ballroom. Everything Yelena had claimed about the baby being a human-AI hybrid had been an elaborate deception. You see, Catherine continued, addressing the crowd, the real Prometheus project wasn't about creating hybrid children. It was about exposing a network of foreign agents who had infiltrated American tech companies. Dr. Williams was never an unwitting test subject. She was an undercover operative helping us build the case. All eyes turned to Amelia, who was still kneeling on the ballroom floor, her hand protectively over her stomach. That's not. I didn't know. Because you couldn't know, Catherine said gently. Your reactions had to be genuine for the cover to work. But Amelia, you've been working for the good guys all along. The neural interface you developed was real, and it did save those infrastructure systems. The only deception was letting Agent Volkov believe she was controlling the outcome. Joshua felt his knees give out as the full magnitude of the revelation hit him. 3 years. 3 years of watching her struggle with trauma and guilt, and she was actually a hero. She was always a hero, Catherine corrected. She just didn't know she was also an agent. Yelena let out a shriek of rage and lunged toward Amelia with a concealed knife, but Joshua intercepted her, tackling the Russian agent to the marble floor. The knife clattered away as FBI agents swarmed to subdue her. This isn't over. Yelena screamed as they dragged her away. There are others. The network is bigger than you know. They'll never stop hunting you. As the chaos of arrests and evidence collection swirled around them, Joshua knelt beside his wife on the ballroom floor, gathering her into his arms. She was crying, not from pain or fear, but from relief so profound it shook her entire body. It's over, he whispered into her hair. The conspiracy, the manipulation, the threats, it's all over. Is it? Amelia pulled back to look at him, her scarred face beautiful in the ballroom chandelier light. Catherine said there are others. Yelena's network. What if? Then we'll face them together, Joshua interrupted. Just like we've faced everything else. Together. Catherine approached them as the crowd began to disperse, her expression mixing professional satisfaction with personal concern. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, I know this has been overwhelming. But I want you to know that the threat is over. Agent Volkov's entire network has been rolled up tonight. The Prometheus project is finished. What about our baby? Amelia asked. The neural interface, the pregnancy. Completely safe, Catherine assured her. The interface modifications will actually deactivate gradually during pregnancy. Your body's changing hormone levels will naturally dissolve the bioelectric pathways. By the time your child is born, you'll be completely normal. Normal? Amelia touched her scarred face. You mean? The scarring will fade, Catherine confirmed. Not completely, but significantly. The neural interface was always designed to be temporary, though we couldn't tell you that without compromising the operation. Joshua felt tears sting his eyes. She'll be free of it. Really free. If she wants to be, Catherine said. The technology can be reactivated later if desired, but only with Dr. Williams' full knowledge and consent. The choice will be entirely hers. As FBI agents finished securing the scene and the last of the crowd filtered out of the ballroom, Joshua and Amelia found themselves alone except for Catherine, who was packing up her equipment. Why? Amelia asked quietly. Why choose me for this? Why put me through 3 years of thinking I was disfigured and traumatized? Catherine paused in her packing, her expression growing sad. Because you were the only person we trusted to do the right thing under impossible circumstances. Because we knew that even if you believed you were damaged, you'd still fight to protect innocent people. And because... She hesitated. Because you reminded me of myself at your age. Brilliant, dedicated, and willing to sacrifice everything for what's right. The scars, Joshua said suddenly. During the operation when you were pretending to be experimenting on her, did they have to be so visible? So dramatic? Catherine's smile was rueful. The visible scarring was the only way to make Agent Volkov believe the neural interface was functioning. But Joshua, you should know, Amelia volunteered for this assignment even after we told her about the potential disfigurement. She chose to sacrifice her appearance to save her country. Joshua looked at his wife with new eyes, seeing not just the woman he'd fallen in love with, but the secret agent who'd risked everything to protect millions of innocent people. My hero, he whispered, cupping her scarred face in his hands. Our hero, Catherine corrected. And now, finally, she gets to come home. Another mind-blowing plot twist is ahead and it will shock you to the bones. You won't believe this, but Amelia has been an undercover agent all along, and everything we thought we knew was part of a deeper deception to catch foreign spies. Stick around. Would it be bad to pretend just to catch an enemy trying to destroy you? What do you think about this? 72 hours later. The Seattle FBI field office felt like a fortress under siege. Through the bulletproof windows of Conference Room C, Joshua could see news vans lined up along the street like an army of metallic vultures, their satellite dishes pointed skyward, broadcasting the fall of the Prometheus conspiracy to a world hungry for answers. Inside the sterile government building, the past 3 days had been a whirlwind of debriefings, testimony, and revelations that kept reshaping everything Joshua thought he knew about his life. Agent Catherine Wright sat across from him and Amelia at a metal table scarred with years of use, surrounded by towers of classified documents and evidence boxes that told the story of a conspiracy 5 years in the making. The final sweep netted 17 additional operatives across 6 countries, Catherine was explaining, her voice hoarse from days of non-stop briefings. The Prometheus network was larger than we initially suspected. Russian SVR, Chinese MSS, and even some North Korean cyber units were all sharing intelligence and resources. Amelia sat beside Joshua, her hand resting protectively over her stomach where their 12-week-old baby was growing. Completely normal, completely healthy, completely theirs. The bioelectric scarring across her face had already begun to fade, the intricate patterns softening from brilliant blue to gentle silver as her body's changing hormones gradually dissolved the neural pathways. But it wasn't the physical changes that concerned Joshua. It was the emotional distance he'd felt growing between them since the ballroom revelations. The woman he'd married had lived with him for 3 years, carrying the weight of a secret mission she didn't even know she was on. Now that the truth was revealed, they were both struggling to understand what parts of their relationship had been real and what had been engineered by handlers and enemies. What about the marriage? Joshua asked quietly, the question that had been haunting him for days. Our meeting, our courtship, our wedding. How much of it was manipulated? Catherine's expression grew gentle. That's actually the most beautiful part of this whole operation, Joshua. Your relationship was never part of our plan. But Agent Volkov said. Agent Volkov lied about many things to maintain her cover, Catherine interrupted. The truth is that you and Amelia meeting was pure coincidence. Your falling in love was authentic. Your decision to marry was entirely your own. She pulled out a tablet and showed them surveillance footage from the tech conference where they'd first met 3 years ago. We were monitoring Dr. Williams as part of her protection detail, but we had no idea who you were until the 3rd date. On the screen, Joshua watched himself approach a younger, less scarred Amelia at a hotel bar, spilling wine on her laptop in his nervousness. The interaction was awkward, genuine, completely unscripted. When our analysts realized that Amelia was developing feelings for you, we had a choice to make, Catherine continued. We could interfere, break you up to maintain operational security, or we could let love take its course and adjust our mission parameters accordingly. You chose love, Amelia said softly, speaking for the first time in an hour. We chose to trust that love would make our agent stronger, not weaker. And we were right. Catherine's smile was warm. Your marriage gave Amelia the emotional stability and support she needed to survive 3 years of believing she was traumatized and disfigured. Joshua, you kept her grounded when the neural interface effects could have driven her to madness. But she didn't know she was an agent, Joshua protested. How could she have consented to the mission if she didn't remember agreeing to it? Catherine's expression grew complicated. Because she did consent, Joshua. Fully and completely. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Amelia straightened in her chair, her dark eyes focusing intently on Catherine's face. Show me, Amelia said quietly. Catherine hesitated. Are you sure? The memory blocks we installed were meant to be permanent. Reactivating them could be disorienting. Show me, Amelia repeated more firmly. Catherine pulled out a device that looked like a sophisticated medical scanner. This will restore your memories of the recruitment and mission briefing. But Amelia, once you remember, you can't unknow it. Are you prepared for that? Amelia looked at Joshua, searching his face for what? Permission. Support. Understanding. I need to know, she said simply. We both need to know. Catherine activated the device, and immediately the silver patterns across Amelia's scarred skin began to glow with soft golden light. Her eyes rolled back for a moment, then snapped open with startling clarity. Oh my God, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I remember. I remember everything. Joshua leaned forward urgently. What do you remember? Amelia's voice was thick with emotion as the restored memories flooded back. 5 years ago, Catherine approached me at MIT. My father, my biological father, had been murdered by foreign agents trying to steal his quantum encryption research. The same agents who later infiltrated American tech companies. She turned to face Joshua fully, her scarred face radiant with returning memories. Catherine offered me a chance to bring down the network that killed my father. But it would require me to undergo experimental neural interface surgery and then live for years believing the surgery was the result of an accident. You said yes, Joshua realized. I said yes because I wanted justice for my father. But also because... She reached for his hands. Because Catherine told me that the mission would require me to live a normal life, to fall in love, to build something real and beautiful while we waited for the enemies to reveal themselves. She told you about me? No, Amelia laughed through her tears. She told me that love would find me when I was ready for it. That the mission would work best if I had something genuine worth protecting. She said that the only way to defeat people who weaponize human connection is to have connections they can't break or corrupt. Catherine nodded confirmingly. We knew that Agent Volkov's network specialized in isolating targets, making them vulnerable by destroying their relationships and support systems. The only way to build a cover identity they couldn't dismantle was to base it on authentic love. So when I met you, Joshua said slowly, when we fell in love. It was real, Amelia said firmly. The realest thing in my life. Even when I thought I was broken, even when I believed I was traumatized and disfigured, even when the whole world was mocking our marriage, my love for you was the one thing I never doubted. Joshua felt his heart crack open with relief and overwhelming emotion. 3 years. 3 years I watched you struggle with what I thought was trauma, and you were actually... I was both, Amelia said gently. The memory blocks didn't erase my emotions, Joshua. I genuinely believed I had been attacked and disfigured. The pain was real, the fear was real, the struggle to rebuild my confidence was real. The mission didn't make me invulnerable to suffering. It just gave that suffering meaning. And now? Joshua asked. Now that you remember, now that the mission is over, now that the scars are fading, who are you really? Amelia stood up from her chair and moved to the window, looking out at the news vans and protesters and supporters who had gathered to catch a glimpse of the couple at the center of the biggest espionage story in decades. I'm the woman who chose to sacrifice her appearance to protect her country, she said quietly. I'm the scientist who developed technology that saved millions of lives. I'm the agent who helped bring down a network of foreign spies. And I'm the wife who loves her husband so much that she would go through 3 years of hell all over again if it meant protecting him and their child. She turned back to face him, her fading scars catching the fluorescent light. But mostly, I'm someone who needs to know if her husband can love the real her as much as he loved the version he thought he knew. The question hit Joshua like a physical blow. In the 72 hours since the ballroom revelations, he'd been struggling with exactly that question. The woman he'd married had been living a lie, even if she hadn't known it was a lie. The vulnerability he'd thought he was protecting had been strength in disguise. The trauma he'd thought he was helping her overcome had been a cover story for one of the most successful counterintelligence operations in American history. Did that change how he felt about her? Did it change what their marriage meant? I need some air, he said abruptly, standing and heading for the door. Joshua. Amelia called after him, but he was already gone. The rooftop of the FBI building offered a view of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond, but Joshua saw none of it. His mind was spinning through 3 years of memories, analyzing them for signs he'd missed, clues that might have told him his wife was actually a secret agent. The way she sometimes woke from nightmares speaking in code words she couldn't remember. The way her scarring sometimes responded to electronic devices in impossible ways. The way she seemed to know things about cybersecurity threats before they became public knowledge. Had any of their marriage been real? Or had he been living with a stranger wearing the face of the woman he loved? You're questioning everything now. Joshua turned to find Catherine Wright emerging from the rooftop access door, her expression understanding. Wouldn't you? He asked. I did, Catherine admitted, moving to stand beside him at the rooftop's edge. When I learned that my late husband had been a CIA operative for the entire duration of our marriage. When I discovered that the man I'd buried wasn't who I thought he was. Joshua looked at her with new understanding. That's why you're really here. That's why you care so much about this case. Amelia reminds me of myself 20 years ago. Brilliant, dedicated, willing to sacrifice everything for what's right, but also vulnerable in ways that make her attractive to people who would exploit that vulnerability. Like me. Catherine's laugh was sharp. Joshua, do you have any idea what you've given her? What you've been to her during this operation? I've been a civilian who didn't know his wife was a spy. You've been her anchor, Catherine corrected. Her connection to humanity when the mission threatened to consume her identity entirely. Do you know how many deep cover agents lose themselves completely? How many forget who they really are beneath the cover? Joshua didn't answer. Amelia never forgot because she had you. Because every morning she woke up to a man who loved her unconditionally. Because every night she went to sleep in the arms of someone who saw her as beautiful and worthy and complete exactly as she was. But I didn't know who she really was. You knew exactly who she really was, Catherine said firmly. You knew her heart, her courage, her compassion, her brilliance. You knew her laugh and her fears and her dreams for the future. The mission didn't change those things. It just gave her a reason to hide them under layers of manufactured trauma. She turned to face him directly. Joshua, that woman downstairs chose to undergo experimental surgery that could have killed her. She chose to live for years believing she was disfigured. She chose to endure public mockery and private pain. All of it for duty, for justice, for the safety of people she'll never meet. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're questioning whether you can love a hero as much as you loved a victim. The words hit Joshua like a slap. That's not. Isn't it? Catherine's voice was gentle but unrelenting. For 3 years you got to be the strong one, the protector, the one who saved the damaged woman and proved that love conquers all. It's a beautiful story, and it made you feel good about yourself. Joshua felt heat rise in his cheeks. You think I only loved her because I thought she needed saving? I think you're scared that now that she doesn't need saving, she might not need you. The accusation hung between them in the Seattle air, carried by wind that smelled of rain and possibility. What if you're right? Joshua asked quietly. What if the only reason she loved me was because I was safe? Because I represented the normal life she had to live for the mission? Then you're both cowards, Catherine said bluntly. Because the love I've watched between you two for the past 3 years isn't based on need or safety or convenience. It's based on recognition. Recognition. You recognize each other, Catherine explained. Not as protector and victim, not as spy and civilian, but as two people who are brave enough to choose love even when it's difficult. Even when it requires sacrifice. Even when the rest of the world thinks you're crazy. She moved toward the rooftop access door, then paused. Amelia could have completed this mission without getting married. She could have lived alone, stayed focused solely on the operation. But she chose to love you anyway, knowing it made the mission more complicated and dangerous. Why are you telling me this? Because in about 10 minutes, she's going to have to testify before a Senate subcommittee about the Prometheus operation. And Joshua, she's terrified. Terrified of the testimony? Terrified that you're going to realize you married someone you don't actually know and decide you want out. Catherine's expression grew sad. She's more scared of losing you than she was of the entire 3-year operation. Joshua felt his heart stop. She thinks I'm going to leave her? She thinks you might realize that loving a secret agent is harder than loving a trauma victim. That the reality of who she is, brilliant, dangerous, capable of things that would terrify most people, might be more than you bargained for. That's ridiculous. Is it? Catherine interrupted. Because you've spent the last 72 hours avoiding her. You've been polite and supportive in public, but you haven't touched her. Haven't kissed her. Haven't told her you love her. From her perspective, you learned who she really was and immediately started pulling away. Joshua felt the world tilt beneath him as he realized Catherine was right. In the chaos of revelations and debriefings, he'd been so focused on processing the truth that he'd forgotten to reassure his wife that the truth didn't change anything. "She's pregnant," he said desperately. "She needs to know I'm not going anywhere." "Then you'd better get downstairs and tell her that," Catherine said. "Because in 5 minutes she walks into that hearing room, and I'd prefer she do it knowing her husband still loves her." Joshua was already moving toward the door when Catherine called after him. "And Joshua, when you tell her you love her, make sure you're telling her you love the agent, not just the woman you thought you married. Because that agent, that brilliant, brave, dangerous woman who sacrificed everything to protect her country, she's who Amelia really is." Joshua took the elevator down 3 floors at a time, his heart racing with the urgency of a man who'd almost made the biggest mistake of his life. The hearing room was just down the hallway, and through the small window in the door, he could see Amelia sitting alone at a witness table, her hands folded protectively over her stomach. She looked small and vulnerable in the vast government room, but Joshua realized that was an illusion. This was the woman who'd outsmarted foreign agents for 3 years. This was the scientist who'd developed technology that saved millions of lives. This was the agent who'd helped bring down an international spy network. This was his wife. He slipped into the hearing room just as the senators were taking their seats. Amelia's eyes found his immediately, and he saw the fear there, not of the senators or the cameras or the questions they were about to ask, but of what she might see in his face. Joshua smiled and mouthed 3 words. "I love you." Not, "I love the woman I thought you were." Not, "I love you despite who you really are." Just, "I love you." Amelia's face lit up with a radiance that had nothing to do with neural interfaces or bioelectric scarring. She touched her stomach and mouthed back, "We love you too." And as the hearing began, as his wife prepared to tell the world the true story of her heroism and sacrifice, Joshua Sterling realized that he'd never loved her more than he did in that moment. Because now, finally, he was loving all of her. Joshua almost made the devastating mistake of pulling away when he learned the truth about Amelia. The fear that love might change when we discover who someone really is. Have you ever faced that moment in a relationship? How do you think their love will be different now that all secrets are revealed? Share your thoughts on whether it's harder to love someone you think needs saving or someone who's capable of saving the world. What would you have done in Joshua's position when you learned everything you believed was built on a necessary lie? 6 months later. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the newly constructed Amelia Williams Sterling Institute for Ethical AI Development, casting rainbow prisms across the state-of-the-art research laboratory. The building itself had become a symbol, its exterior designed with flowing, organic patterns that celebrated the marriage of human intuition and artificial intelligence, but also honored the courage required to bridge those worlds. Joshua stood in the observation deck of the Institute's main laboratory, watching his wife work with a team of graduate students from around the world. At 7 months pregnant, Amelia moved with the careful grace of expectant motherhood, her hand frequently finding her rounded belly as their daughter, their perfectly normal, completely healthy daughter, kicked and rolled inside her. The bioelectric scarring that had once covered her face and arms was now barely visible. Faint silver lines that traced elegant patterns across her dark skin like delicate jewelry. The neural interface had dissolved completely during her 2nd trimester, just as Catherine Wright had predicted. But rather than feeling diminished by the loss of her enhanced abilities, Amelia seemed to glow with a different kind of power entirely. The key to ethical AI development, she was explaining to her students, her voice carrying clearly through the lab speakers, is understanding that artificial intelligence should enhance human capability, not replace human judgment. Technology serves humanity best when it amplifies our empathy, not when it substitutes for it. One of her students, Dr. James Chen, a former military cyber warfare specialist who'd lost both legs in Afghanistan, raised his hand. Dr. Sterling, what about situations where human judgment might be compromised by emotion or bias? Shouldn't AI sometimes override human decision-making? Amelia smiled, resting her hand on her belly as their daughter performed what felt like a gymnastics routine. That's exactly the wrong question, James. The right question is, how do we design AI systems that help humans make better decisions while preserving human agency and dignity? She moved to a holographic display that showed the neural pathway schematics she'd developed during her years as an unwitting agent. My experience with neural interface technology taught me something crucial. The moment you surrender human autonomy to artificial intelligence, you stop being human. You become a component in a machine. But your work during the Prometheus operation saved millions of lives, pointed out Dr. Sarah Kim, another graduate student. Wouldn't the world be safer if more people had your enhanced capabilities? The world would be safer if more people had my determination to protect others, Amelia corrected gently. The neural interface didn't make me heroic. It just gave me tools to express heroism that was already there. Technology can amplify human virtues, but it can't create them. Joshua felt the familiar warmth spread through his chest as he watched her teach. In the 6 months since the Senate hearings, Amelia had become more than vindicated. She'd become a global leader in the emerging field of ethical artificial intelligence. The institute had been funded jointly by the Department of Defense, the United Nations, and a consortium of private donors who believed that AI development needed moral guidance. But more than her professional success, it was watching her confidence bloom that made Joshua's heart sing. The woman who'd once hidden behind carefully chosen clothing now wore maternity dresses that proudly displayed her fading scars and growing belly. She'd testified before Congress, appeared on magazine covers, and given TED Talks about the intersection of technology and human dignity. The media, which had once mocked their marriage, now celebrated them as a power couple who'd overcome impossible odds. #LoveConquersConspiracy had become a rallying cry for couples facing adversity. Their story had inspired legislation protecting the privacy rights of intelligence operatives' families. And the Amelia Sterling Foundation for Ethical Technology had already awarded grants to 50 research projects around the world. "She's remarkable," came a voice behind him. Joshua turned to find his mother standing in the doorway of the observation deck. Victoria Sterling looked radiant, her usual armor of designer perfection replaced by the genuine happiness of a woman preparing to become a grandmother. In her hands, she carried a small gift bag decorated with tiny booties and baby birds. "Mother." Joshua's voice was warm now, the ice between them completely thawed. "You're early for lunch." "I wanted to watch her work," Victoria said, moving to stand beside him at the observation window. "I'm still trying to understand how I so completely misjudged her character." Below them in the lab, Amelia was helping James Chen calibrate a new prosthetic interface that would allow him to control his artificial legs through thought alone, not through invasive neural interface, but through sophisticated pattern recognition that read the electrical signals his muscles still generated. "She's not just brilliant," Victoria continued, her voice thick with emotion. "She's kind. The way she works with these students, the way she makes each of them feel capable of changing the world. I've never seen anything like it." "She's been like that since the day I met her," Joshua said softly. "I just didn't realize she was also saving the country at the same time." Victoria laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in years. "Your father would have loved her. David was always drawn to people who fought for justice, even when it cost them everything." The mention of his father no longer brought pain. The truth about David Sterling Sr.'s murder had been revealed during the Senate hearings, along with the evidence that he'd been trying to protect American technology from foreign infiltration. In death, he'd been vindicated as a patriot and a visionary. The Sterling Foundation now awarded annual grants for cybersecurity research in his honor. "Speaking of fighting for what's right," Victoria said, her tone shifting to something more serious, "I have something to tell you." Joshua raised an eyebrow. Good news or bad news? Complicated news. Victoria pulled out her phone and showed him a news article from that morning's Washington Post. The headline read, "International Tribunal Convicts Prometheus Network Leaders of Crimes Against Humanity." Joshua scanned the article quickly. Agent Yelena Volkov and 17 members of her international spy network had been sentenced to life imprisonment. Richard Blackstone had received 25 years for espionage and conspiracy. The Prometheus project had been officially classified as a crime against humanity, and reparations were being paid to all affected families. "That's good news," Joshua said. "Justice served." "Read the last paragraph," Victoria said quietly. Joshua's eyes found the final section of the article. In a surprising development, the tribunal also announced the creation of the International Ethics Board for AI Development, to be chaired by Dr. Amelia Williams Sterling. The board will have authority to investigate and regulate AI research programs that involve human subjects, ensuring that the Prometheus Project atrocities are never repeated. Joshua stared at the screen. They want her to lead an international oversight board? Based in Geneva. Full diplomatic immunity. A chance to shape global AI policy for the next generation. Victoria's voice was careful. "It's an incredible honor. The kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. But it would mean moving to Switzerland. Leaving Seattle, leaving the Institute, leaving everything you've built here." Joshua felt his stomach drop. Just when they'd found their footing, just when their life had achieved a perfect balance, the world was offering Amelia something that could change everything again. "Have you told her about this?" he asked. "I thought you should know first, so you could discuss it together." Joshua looked down at his wife, who was now demonstrating a new haptic feedback system that allowed users to feel virtual objects. She was radiant with pregnancy and purpose, completely in her element as both teacher and innovator. "She'll want to take it," he said quietly. "It's exactly the kind of work she's meant to do." "And you'll support her decision," Victoria said. It wasn't a question. "Of course." Joshua's answer was immediate and certain. "If she wants to reshape global AI policy, then we reshape global AI policy. Together." Victoria smiled, and for the first time since his childhood, Joshua saw genuine pride in his mother's eyes. "You really have learned what love looks like, haven't you?" Before Joshua could answer, the lab's intercom crackled to life. "Joshua Sterling to Laboratory 1, please. Joshua Sterling to Laboratory 1. Something in the urgent tone made both Joshua and Victoria hurry downstairs. They found Amelia sitting in a chair, surrounded by her concerned students, her hand pressed to her lower back. "What's wrong?" Joshua asked, immediately kneeling beside her. "I think our daughter has decided she's ready to meet the world," Amelia said with a strained smile. "My water broke about 5 minutes ago." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of hospital corridors, medical monitoring, and the controlled chaos of labor and delivery. Joshua held Amelia's hand through every contraction, marveling at her strength as she brought their child into the world with the same fierce determination she'd shown in everything else. At 11:47 p.m. on a clear October night, Grace Elena Sterling made her entrance. 6 pounds, 12 ounces of perfect, healthy, completely normal baby girl. No neural interface modifications, no bioelectric scarring, no experimental enhancements. Just a beautiful child with her mother's dark eyes and her father's determined chin. As the nurses cleaned and weighed their daughter, Joshua sat beside Amelia's hospital bed, stroking her hair and watching the silver traces of her former scarring catch the fluorescent light. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "About what?" Amelia's voice was hoarse from labor but filled with contentment. "About the mission. About the 3 years of believing you were damaged. About marrying someone who didn't know who you really were." Amelia turned to look at him, her dark eyes bright with tears of joy and exhaustion. "Joshua Sterling, those 3 years taught me something I could never have learned any other way." "What's that?" "That love isn't about knowing everything about someone. It's about choosing them anyway, mystery and all. You fell in love with me when you thought I was broken. You stayed in love with me when you learned I was dangerous. And now you're holding our daughter, ready to follow me to Switzerland if that's what the world needs from us." "Switzerland?" Joshua asked with mock surprise. "What makes you think I know about Switzerland?" Amelia laughed, the sound filling the hospital room with warmth. "Because your mother told me about the International Ethics Board position while you were filling out admission paperwork. And because I've been watching your face for the last 6 months, learning to read your expressions now that I remember how to read everything else. And I can see that you're scared I'll choose duty over family again. But Joshua, I want you to understand something." She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. The woman who volunteered for the Prometheus mission was someone who believed she had to choose between love and justice. The woman holding your baby right now knows that the best justice comes from love. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we're going to Geneva. Together. All 3 of us. And we're going to build something beautiful. A family and a legacy that shows the world what happens when love and purpose align." A gentle knock on the door interrupted them. Catherine Wright entered carrying a bouquet of flowers and wearing the smile of someone who'd watched her protégé complete the most important mission of all. "How are the new parents?" she asked, moving to peer at baby Grace in her bassinet. "Overwhelmed and perfect," Joshua replied. "Good. Because I have one more surprise for you." Catherine pulled out an official-looking document. "The President has approved a special commendation for Dr. Sterling's service during the Prometheus operation. You're going to be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom." Amelia's eyes widened. That's the highest civilian honor." "For the highest level of civilian service," Catherine confirmed. "Your sacrifice and heroism saved thousands of lives and protected national security interests. The ceremony is in 3 weeks, and the President specifically requested that your family be present." Joshua felt tears sting his eyes as he looked around the hospital room, at his wife, still glowing from bringing their daughter into the world, at their perfect baby sleeping peacefully, at Catherine, who'd guided them through the most difficult chapter of their lives, at his mother, who stood in the doorway with tears of pride streaming down her face. 2 years ago, the world had mocked their marriage as a mismatch between beauty and beast. Tonight, they were being recognized as a family whose love had literally helped save the world. "Any regrets now?" he asked Amelia again. "Just one," she said, smiling as baby Grace yawned and stretched in her sleep. "What's that?" "I regret that we'll never get to experience falling in love for the first time again. But I'm excited to spend the rest of our lives discovering new ways to love each other." Joshua leaned down to kiss his wife. His brilliant, brave, beautiful wife who'd sacrificed everything to protect others and found her way back to herself through love. As their lips met, he heard Grace make a small sound of contentment, as if even their newborn daughter approved of the love story that had brought her into existence. Outside the hospital window, Seattle's skyline glittered against the October night, a city full of people living their own love stories, fighting their own battles, learning their own lessons about what it meant to choose connection over fear. And in that hospital room, as husband and wife held their daughter and planned their future in Geneva, they knew with absolute certainty that love, true love, brave love, the kind that stood up and fought back when the world tried to tear it down, was the most powerful force in the universe. Sometimes it saved the world. Sometimes it just saved 3 hearts that were brave enough to believe they deserved saving. Either way, it was always, always worth the fight. 18 months later, the International Ethics Board headquarters in Geneva buzzed with quiet efficiency as Dr. Amelia Williams Sterling concluded her presentation to delegates from 47 nations. On the conference room's massive screens, she just revealed the framework for global AI development standards that would protect human dignity while advancing technological progress. The Prometheus Protocols, as they'd been named, established ironclad safeguards against the kind of human experimentation that had nearly destroyed her life. But more than that, they created a vision for AI development rooted in love, love for humanity, love for justice, love for the possibility that technology could make the world more compassionate rather than less. As the delegates broke for lunch, Joshua entered the conference room carrying 18-month-old Grace, who immediately reached for her mother with chubby arms and a brilliant smile. "How did it go?" he asked, settling Grace in Amelia's lap. "Unanimous approval," Amelia replied, nuzzling their daughter's curls. "The Prometheus Protocols will be international law within 6 months." "And how does it feel to have officially saved the world?" Amelia looked around the conference room, where delegates were already discussing implementation strategies. Through the windows, Lake Geneva sparkled in the afternoon sun, and the Swiss Alps rose majestically in the distance. It was a long way from the Seattle ballroom where their love story had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than steel. "It feels like the beginning," she said softly. "Like we've finished one chapter and we're ready to start writing the next one." "What's the next chapter about?" Amelia smiled, her faded scars catching the alpine light, and kissed her husband and daughter in turn. "It's about a family that learned love doesn't just conquer all. It transforms everything it touches. And about how sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from refusing to let them define who you become." As they left the conference building together, husband, wife, and daughter walking into their future, tourists and locals alike turned to watch them pass. Not because they recognized the famous couple whose love story had changed international law, but because there was something unmistakably beautiful about the way they moved through the world together. Love had won, not just against conspiracy and prejudice and the cruelty of strangers, but against the deeper enemies that threatened every relationship: doubt, fear, and the temptation to love someone for who you think they should be rather than who they actually are. Joshua and Amelia Sterling had learned to love each other completely. Scars and secrets, strength and vulnerability, truth and mystery all intertwined. And in learning that, they'd created something that would outlast any conspiracy, any threat, any challenge the world could throw at them. They'd created a love story worth fighting for.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.